Good afternoon, it's Wednesday, it's 4 o'clock, and it's time for another episode of MIQTV. Now, I'm hoping to be joined this afternoon by Dave Lancaster, who left Queggs in 1992, hoping that the technology works and that he will be able to join us. We've had one or two challenges trying to get connected in our testing, but I'm hoping that we won't have any challenges this afternoon and he'll be able to join us. As I said, Dave left Queggs in 1992 and went on to Wakefield College for his sixth form, which I'm hoping he's going to tell us all about. He's been a member of the Royal Signals Corps, and again, we're looking forward to hearing about that. I would have hoped he would have joined by now, as many have, so thank you to all the people that are joining to watch. I'm still waiting for my guest to arrive. So bear with us. Once more, good afternoon to everyone joining. I'm just waiting for my guest, and I've had a message saying he's unable to join. That's unfortunate, so I shall invite him again. As I say, we have had one or two gremlins in our preparations for this afternoon. So I apologise in advance if we're not going to be able to speak to him. We may have to rebook. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Here he is, in fact. The camera's pointed the other way. Here he is. Marvellous. Good afternoon, sir.
Getting easy, isn't
it? We're nearly there now. Seamless. I was just explaining, quite a few people have joined already. Welcome to everyone tuning in this afternoon. I was just explaining, we have had one or two gremlins in trying to get connected, but you're here, you're ready, and we are very, very grateful to you for joining us this afternoon to talk about your life and times in the 30 years as it is since you left Queggs. So perhaps we can start with a quick tour of everything that's happened from then to now. Give us a quick overview of your journey from even joining Queggs, if you like, but from Queggs to here.
Well, so I came up to Queggs in '87, which sounds like an absolute lifetime ago now, but feels also like a blink of an eye. And spent 5 years there, which has shaped me even to this day, I would say. Come 15, for some reason, I thought, despite getting a decent set of GCSEs, all B's and C's, when that's all, only the A was higher than that in those days, as I tell my kids. And I decided I was too good for that, and grew my hair, wore silly clothes, and went over to Wakefield College, where they let it get all my silliness out of my system. And I scraped a couple of A-levels. Went on to university, where I met my future wife and some friends for life. So I don't regret it at all, but I certainly regret my lack of a work ethic. Basically ended up without a penny to my name. I'm wondering what on earth I was doing with my life. And I walked into the careers office in Wakefield. And I think, like I said yesterday, I think the staff sergeant on the desk there, I think he must have seen just a little bit of something, a spark behind the eyes, because a couple of tests, and that's how it was in those days. 3 weeks later, just some basic government checks that I was who I said I was. And I was down at Blandford doing joining the Royal Signals, and the next 23 years was equally as much fun.
Wow. So more than half your life then in the Royal Signals. Tell us a bit about what that involved. Sort of, you said you joined up, basic training. People who are watching may not understand, as I don't fully, how that works. So could you give us a little bit more detail in what that's involved and what the Royal Signals do, perhaps, so we understand, please?
The Royal Signals welcome you in the careers office with this smiling charm and they talk about a residential course. And then you get on the train, you get a little free. They have a thing called the Queen's Shilling, and it goes all the way back to the days of Sharp, and you get £20. It was in 1998, 99, whenever I joined, it was £20. I remember that clearly. And that's for your first couple of days pay. And it gets you, but out of that, it deducts your bus fare into town. It's so typically army. And then you get your little train fare, and off you go with your suitcase and what you think is a smart haircut. And then life changes quite quickly. But so you get off the bus to be greeted by your friendly local sergeant, who's your father figure for the next 12 weeks. And yeah, that evening you get your hair cut. Not a great, not a great style, if I'm honest. But within 12 hours, I knew I was amongst like-minded individuals, boys and girls, who,
Interesting.
all for one reason or another, perhaps had not quite achieved at that stage of their life. Bear in mind, I was nearly 21, so time was running out. I was one of the elder back in those days. That was seen as relatively.
Oh, okay.
And I'd achieved very, very little. No degree to my name. A girlfriend who really wanted more from life than someone who worked as a temp in a car park at Fieldhead Hospital, which I don't blame her. And so, yeah, we kind of all realised that we needed some structure and some discipline, and actually this was going to provide it. So we all knuckled down, we all passed. We were one of the few troops to have no failures. We all worked together, mucked in as a team. And it was one of the greatest lessons of my life about getting the best out of everyone, with that whole so-and-so is physically powerful, so-and-so is very, very clever, he's extremely well-read, she's the cleverest person I've met, you know, and all those skills coming together to solve a problem and solve a task. And because we're a little bit older and we all had certain skill sets, you could just get through it a little bit. You know, when they're screaming and shouting at something, you know it's just a game. It's just, nothing's going to happen. They're just screaming and shouting at you, and it'll all be over in a couple of weeks. And, you know, and then it got more and more fun. And I like I said, I retired on Monday after we spoke. And yeah, it's going in the blink of an eye. Great times, bad times, scary times, but overall I'd do every second of it again. And I think, you know, if people can look back on their career and say, I would do every minute of that again, I think you're in a very lucky position. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And you've alluded to there, because we can pick that up. You've literally finished in the army this week on Monday, you said. And when we booked this in, I had no idea that was the case. So if we look back at, obviously you've got basic training, which particular, could you pick out some highlights of your time in the army, some of the very best bits that you look back on, interesting postings or interesting jobs you got to do that you're able to talk about perhaps?
I was very, very fortunate in my career. I had a lot of very good individual postings, and a couple of my real highlights were during the scrap in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was lucky. Yeah, it was an honour to deploy 4 times, each with a specialist unit, and one of my units was a thing called ECMFP, Electronic Countermeasures Force Protection. And what that does, without going into too much detail, but it effectively prevents roadside bombs, i.e. devices. And so my job was to ensure that our ECM for our patrols on the ground was in and working and working correctly and protecting correctly. And I used to brief on it and train on it. And that was one of the privileges of my life, because I was using soft skills that I'd learned at school, but also those technical skills that the Royal Signals had taught me, but also all the way back to my CDT classes, when I used to get fined 50p for forgetting my apron by Mr. Ben. Actually, all stood me in good stead when I was then soldering on the battlefield, sometimes under something horrible, skills that I'd learned as a
way back in school.
So and then I was fortunate. Then after that, I moved on to a thing called WIS, which was Weapons Intelligence Specialist Company. And then it was a more cerebral role, because my job then was to go out post-event and try and work out what had gone wrong. Had ECM failed, or was it not radio control? Was it just an RPG strike or whatever? So my job then became working with the Royal Military Police as a technical forensic analyst to try and work out, how that had happened. Could it happen again? Is there anything we could do to prevent it? So those 2 tours back to back were the most demanding of my life, but also probably the most rewarding.
Yeah, I imagine that there were some difficult times, obviously, in that doing that role. But it's interesting you say it's the most rewarding, because I guess, I mean, don't put words in your mouth, but did you feel like it was really making a difference? You obviously saw evidence of that day to day, I guess. Is that how you felt? Or
it certainly was. So there's the thing around ECM called the bubble, and it's all in the papers. It's not particularly. I think the distance is classic.
Yeah, don't reveal any secrets on here.
No. Well, no. It'll have all changed in the last 10 years anyway. If they're still using the kit I worked on, something's gone wrong. But at the time, so there was a set distance of what's called the bubble, and what that used to do was prevent the bomb from going off effectively in that space. And there were occasions when you would drive past something, and then the patrol would report a bang 70 meters behind them, harmlessly going bang. And that is a very, very strong indication that the equipment you've fitted, worked on, trained on has prevented a tragedy. And that's, that's someone going back to their kids, their parents that may not have done, or going back in one, that may not have done. Because of course that's the thing. Without this, isn't a broadcast here or anything, or me ranting, but it seems a long time ago now. The Afghan war. If the students watching, it will be what is it, 5+ years now since it finished, since the last troops came home. So but there's a lot of people maimed mentally and of course physically.
Of course,
never get their legs back, never get their arms back. Be mentally right again, and it's kind of forgotten about already. And
I know it's awful, isn't it? But you're able to make a difference. So I mean, I guess touching upon that, there must have been some really challenging times. I mean, at what point do you evaluate what you're doing, or what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in your career, do you think?
So it's all centered around that time, of course. That was the most intense period for any British soldier. And it's about a 7-year period from the start of the 2000. I first deployed to Iraq in 2006. So I was actually quite late to go because I think the invasion was 2003, 2004. And it was I can speak a bit more freely now that I'm out. I was completely against, this is just a personal opinion, nothing else. I was completely against the war.
Wow.
I was very, very, very glad I was in Iraq and not involved. No, I wasn't. Northern Ireland at the time. And I wasn't involved with the invasion because I just was so uncomfortable with it. But of course, I'm not allowed an opinion on it.
Of course, yeah.
I would have gone and I would have done my best. I'm absolutely not saying I was a CO or anything, but I was uncomfortable with it. For a whole host of reasons. But by the time I got there, it was a counterinsurgency and we were trying to rebuild the country. So therefore, I was extremely proud to go and to hopefully try and do a little tiny bit. Then I felt we were going there for the right reasons. But yes, crossing the border, it's no one's fault. I would have of course gone and would have done it without question. But quite relieved when by the time I went, we were and anyway, I'm digressing. It was a 5 to 7 year period from the start of Iraq 2012. I had promoted as a yeoman of signals and went back to 14 SIGs in Wales. But I was operational for a good 6 or 7 years there when it was very, very busy and you were doing regularly a tour a year. And I suffered a little bit actually. I had to have 6 weeks of a little bit of help from the help people in Cardiff, which once upon a time, if you said that in the mess, people would be like,
oh, really?
Going a little bit, going a bit at the seams. But it was dramatic. I mean, it's such a skillful set of people because the things they've seen, nothing phases them.
Yeah.
Me being a bit stressed, it's nothing. It's a couple of weeks treatment and it's all over, and it's fantastic. And I wish that was available to more people out in the real world. So,
right.
Yeah, that was the most difficult time, and that was the one time when I thought maybe it's time to do something else. 2 young kids, put myself at risk constantly, but I didn't. I stuck with it, and it stood me in good stead. And actually, having got through it unscathed, it's easy for me to say, but I wouldn't have changed a thing. It was tough times, but you never feel more alive when you're wondering if tomorrow might be I don't want to overdramatize. I also spent vast periods in Camp Bastion doing very little. So,
well, that's the other side of it, isn't it? There's a lot of empty time as well, I imagine. And you mentioned 2 young kids there. Your future wife, you met at university. You've had children. So obviously, with travelling around the world, what challenges does that present with a young family or even a family? I imagine, again, I've not done it myself, but there must be some challenges to overcome there.
Yeah, it was tough at times actually, because even when you're not deploying, the exercise burden at times can be quite tough. 7 weeks in, but it was easy for me because I was going away. So I remember one exercise with the American WITS team, so their Weapons Intelligence Technical Specialists, similar to what I was doing, but the American arm of it. I deployed with them for 2 months over in Fort Irwin in California, of which we had 4 days in Vegas as a acclimatization and then 5 days at the end. And I thought I'd better ring Sam and say, look, I've got these. They put us up. The Americans put us up in I think it was the Hilton on the Strip.
Yeah.
In Vegas, which is not a bad way to start an exercise, and certainly not a bad way to end one when you've got a few saved pounds in your pocket.
There's worse days at work, certainly.
Absolutely. And I said to Sam, I said, "Oh, do you want to come out for those 5 days?" Knowing full well she had two young kids, and she couldn't. But I was caught in a trap because if I you know, she'd have thought me insensitive, but she certainly wasn't very impressed when she was like, "Well, you know full well I can't just drop the kids and come and join you in Vegas." So it's more difficult for those left behind. We're very lucky because we put the girls into a boarding school in Bath, which was fantastic, and has done wonders for them. And I think they've thoroughly enjoyed life. But it's not a conventional life, of course, but it's more stable for them. So
yeah, I guess, you know, with the challenges of that, I can see how that would work. And so what is next for you? You finished in the service on Monday this week. So
yeah.
What's coming up next? What do you go on to? You're obviously not retired completely, or maybe you are. Tell us about.
I always used to want to just play golf. That was my thing. Just play I always said I'll have 6 months after the Army. I'll have 6 months to play golf. Sam, who does the finances, showed me the books. She said, "You're not having 6 months off. Try 6 weeks." I'm very, very lucky. I mean, most people don't get 6 weeks, 8 weeks off at this time of their life. So I've started that. I'm 2 days in, and I'm already run out of jobs to do. So I'm very glad you rang me today. So.
Oh, good. We're helping you out. Are you going to get to the golf course at some point then?
At some stage, yeah. Like I said to you the other day, I twisted my knee on Monday. My last 5 minutes in military service, which was quite ironic. So, yeah, as soon as that's fixed, straight back on the golf course. But then I'm looking to go across to the civil service for a few years. So we'll see how that.
Okay.
So yeah, not too fairly local.
Is that a common route for people leaving the service? What sorts of things do people, you know, go on to do? Is the civil service and other, you know, I guess you're trained for lots of stuff. So I imagine you've got opportunities. What sort of things have you looked at, or what do you know that other colleagues who've left the service have gone on to do?
The role signal has been very, very, very good to me, and kind of educated me a little bit. So as I said, I left Bradford without a degree, which is completely my fault and no one else's. So I was lucky to have my degree in communications management topped up with my previous university service. So the education officer said, "Right, what have you got? What have you learned?" I showed him what I'd done, and he said, "Right, for £2,600, you can have a year at University of Lincoln part-time." I was like, absolutely. But to make it even better, you get under the Gordon Brown government, because there were high rates once of problems after leaving the military, brought called ELCs, enhanced learning credits, and you can put, I think each one's worth £2,000.
Oh, wow.
With a 20% deposit. So I paid £600 for a year at university, which my daughter thinks is quite good value.
Good value, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So they finished off my education. Then very recently, they put me through a project management course, so the Association of Project Managers, PM qualification. So they put me through that from zero to hero. So I cannot grumble. The actual transition stage is fantastic. And I learned then that people were doing anything and everything. So level 18 home electronics, so to be an electrician on a housing site, working supervised.
Right.
Yeah, tick. Heavy goods vehicle, tick. It all depends, because the Army is such a broad church.
Yes.
It's a very technical profession. So we tend to go into government work, or just two sides really, the technical stream and the intelligence stream, depending on what your trade was in the military. So if you go in the intelligence side of things, you might want to work for the police force and the counter threat or something of that ilk.
And so I imagine it's not that difficult to find employment, or it just depends.
I mean, you never like to say. I mean, I was very lucky. I managed to.
You've dropped on, is how you feel, yeah.
It's a bit of at times it feels like you're benefiting a little bit of an old boys and girls club, which, you know, it can be at times, because my CV was written for me effectively. And I do sometimes wonder, when I go out to the big wide world, you know, I might be that lost 18-year-old again. Am I going to be looking for
Well, you'll have to keep us up to date with what happens, because obviously that's the next chapter for you, which is, I guess, exciting and a bit nerve-wracking perhaps as well, because it's a new venture. And we wish you all the best with that, obviously. And maybe we'll do a follow-up at some point.
I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's looking forward. If we look back to your time in school, have you got any particular memories that stand out, or any fond memories, or any bad memories, I suppose, but anything that when you think back of school that jumps to mind particularly?
So one thing I must have thoroughly enjoyed. I was a silly rebel without a clue at 15 who tried to grow his horrible, greasy, curly hair a bit long at the back. And I'm sure I'm not the first 15-year-old lad who went through that. But
Or the last.
Yeah. Looking back, it was just a great atmosphere. And so many laughs. My brother, as I mentioned to you in the email, my brother was just took the mick out of all this, in a good-natured way, all the teachers. And every time we met up, you know, I'd come back on leave and I'd catch up with my brother. We would be laughing and joking about stories from school. So you look back and you think, well, I must have thoroughly enjoyed it, you know, as well as getting a fairly decent set of GCSEs. And I'm sure I mumbled and grumbled about it at the time, but do you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed that place. The atmosphere was great, and I just remember a lot of fun, a lot of laughter.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you were here for the 400 years anniversary. Was that in your time?
Absolutely. So one of my last jobs was working. So it was this time last summer. I was in an aircrew job with an American aircraft, and I've basically been seconded, and I'm surrounded by these Americans, and they kept saying the old question, "Hey, Dave, you ever met the Queen?" It's quite cool to be able to say, "Well, yes, actually, I have."
Actually, I did, yeah.
Yeah. She came to my school. Our school was 400 years old, and I said she came around to help at Mr. Carosi's biology class, and I was there grinning.
How cool!
Hello. So, yep, absolutely. So yes, that's a pretty big memory actually. That was fantastic.
And you already mentioned getting fined 50p by Mr. Ben. Are any other teachers? Many of them will have moved on, but I think we talked on Monday. One or two are still here. Any fond memories of particular teachers who either stood out for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? I suppose you could share either.
No, absolutely. I was very lucky actually. So I played a bit of rugby with Mr. Barra Club. Down at the old Wakefield Club.
How did you?
He was the captain of the thirds for a while, and I was his winger. I was his winger, would be a bit of an arrogant. Occasionally let me play on the wing. And he used to be our barnstorming prop and captain, so that was a lot of fun. I saw Mr. Furness back I've been in the army 10 years, and I came back on leave, and I was in a pub, and I saw Mr. Furness singing "The Devil Drove Down to Georgia" on the karaoke in the British Oak.
That's one of my favourites as well.
That was brilliant. I think I might have got that on my little Nokia somewhere, so that might be floating around. So that's pretty good.
He retired around about the time you left. Actually, he went on. I think he went on to a new career. I knew him vaguely because he left around the time I arrived. But yeah, anybody else?
And funny enough, you're talking about Mr. Ben fining 50p. That was quite a lot back then. If I'm I might have to check the amount there. That seems a lot. But I remember Mr. Anderson, who taught physics occasionally. Was it first names? I still feel guilty.
Jeff Anderson was head of physics.
Yeah. He used to fine you 10p per bag that you left in the corridor. So if you were very unlucky on a Wednesday afternoon, if you had DT followed by physics, you could end up nearly £1 down.
You'd be skinned before you got home, yeah.
That's right. There goes my lunch money.
And you're obviously a Wakefield lad. You've still got family in the area? You get back up to Wakefield much?
Yeah, very much. I do actually. Probably more now because my eldest daughter's just started at Leeds.
Brilliant.
And my parents are still in the family home, so I actually get back to Wakefield quite a lot. And I've never been back to the school. I'm not hinting here for an invite.
No, that's where I was going with it. Exactly where I was going.
I said to my wife and kids, that's my old school. It looked beautiful. Lovely 1850s Victorian architecture. I'll take you down to the original building in Wakefield Market. And they're like, oh, God, why are you some sort of school geek? I was like, well, no, I've never been.
But it's there is a lot of history attached to the school, and obviously old boys like yourself are proud of it. And where I was going with was exactly that. It's quite common when I talk to old students, old civilians, that they haven't been back to school much or even at all for whatever reason. People go and get on with their lives, but anybody watching as well who's an old boy at the school, and anyone who wants to come to visit us anytime. But please, next time you're in Wakefield, do come and visit. We'll give you a tour. You can have lunch and catch up with people who remember you. And it's a nice time to go and look at the old hall, see what's the same, see what's different, I'm sure. So, I would definitely extend the invitation to come to school whenever it's convenient. So that's an open invite, please, whenever you're in Wakefield. So if we look, we've been talking already 25 minutes, it's absolutely flown. But if we're looking at sort of lessons learned and things we might be able to offer the audience from your experiences, 30 years from being a Quakes boy. What sort of things, if you were recruiting, and I'm sure the army are always recruiting, aren't they? Or regularly recruiting into different regiments. What key things would you be looking for in candidates? What makes a good soldier in your view, or a good serviceman or woman?
Good service person these days. I love what Quakes gave me was that communications ability, and that's massively important. And obviously schools like Quakes, like the good academies, like the some of the Roman Catholic schools up north, give you that critical thinking as well. Just that ability to not to question what you're doing, because there's a time to just get on with it, but there is a time to go, are you absolutely sure, sir, that perhaps we can do it this way? And if you do that in the right way, 9 times out of 10, people go, thanks very much. At the time, they may not say it. I worked for a boss of mine who was a right old tyrant. I mean, I got on with him. I thought he was a great bloke, but a character. He was so 1970s. I don't know how he'd survived this long, because he'd just shouting his head off, swearing in the wrong environments, and all sorts of things. And I was the only one that could somehow pacify him. And
interesting.
Come out with some crazy suggestion. He'd be like, right, we're all agreed. Yes. I was just about to rubber stamp it, and I'd go, well, sir, just all I would say is, and he'd be like, oh my God, you're always throwing your oar in, blah, blah, blah. But then afterwards he said to me, thank you for just pulling me back once or twice. And the way you did it was just polite and just questioning with a little bit of intelligence, the other side of the view. Always think about the other side of the view. I remember deploying during Ramadan to Iraq, and a lot of the lads were like, oh, we can't smoke during Ramadan. Isn't that the end of the world? And one or two of us were like, well, no, hang on. If you think about it, that's their culture for hundreds of years in Iraq. And we're coming in there as guests, effectively, at the request of the Iraqi government. Why on earth would we want to just bring our dirty cultural habits, as they would see it, to that situation? And I think that's what the modern soldier needs to be doing all the time, because we're a small and mobile force. It's not necessarily going to defend Dover beaches. We're going to be going somewhere where we have to think critically about our environment, be that Northern Ireland again, be it the Middle East, be it wherever the next conflict might be. There's always more to even the Ukraine conflict, which I'm absolutely not going to comment on, because I'm certainly not allowed to, but there will be nuances in that. Obviously, we all agree with the bigger picture that there has been a massive breach of international law, but there will be nuances in there. Most people are not considering. So it's that ability to critical intelligence, critical thinking. We've never needed it more. Don't just believe everything that you're told. Effectively, not suggesting conspiracy theories, but just
the fake news agenda and that sort of thing. Yeah, what is real and what isn't is a difficult situation. Yeah,
absolutely. And the second piece of advice is, don't be afraid of a technical career, and that's something I'm always telling my girls. And my eldest daughter's studying a law degree. That's absolutely great. I love it. But had she wanted to do a technical apprenticeship, well, I did a technical career, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've used an awful lot of skills. As the world changes and we become technically more proficient, I think it's an avenue, as certain degree courses get more and more expensive as well. It's certainly not an avenue to be extinguished. Craig's had a fine technical tradition when I was there, and I'm sure it still does.
It still does, yeah.
The sciences and the technical stream, I wouldn't be afraid of using it.
Wow, thank you. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, if you go back in time and tap 15, 16-year-old self on the shoulder, what advice might you give your younger self from the perspective of 30 years
old? My younger self.
Well, more generally, then, younger versions of Quake students for the future.
I would say just be patient. There will come a time when you realise how fortunate you were to have attended such a good school. And I'm not just saying that, this is purely voluntary. I sent an email off trying to be an old civilian. It's been 30 years. This is purely me genuinely saying, you will have skills from your school days that will last you. It's only 5 years, but it informs the way you speak, the way you think, the way you act, and your standards for life. And they are grounded and built in your educational environment in an awful lot of settings, because it's where you meet your role models, your peer group, your interests. And I gained a hell of a lot. At 15, I didn't know that. I thought the world owed me a living. It didn't.
Yes.
And I found that out over the next couple of years, which was my stupidity.
The hard way, as it were. Yeah.
It will come. You don't have to do everything at 14, 15. you know, it'll still be there when you're 17, 18. Enjoy the discipline of Quags and just enjoy your time there, because there will come a time when you appreciate it. But try telling that to a 15-year-old lad. It's probably
well, of course. But I love that. I think patience is a really lovely message. It will come, because and everyone gets there at different paces as well. I think we all recognise that. You, as you said before, some people were entering the service at a younger age than you, which, you know, but it doesn't matter when it happens, does it? As long as it happens, and it'll happen for each individual at the right time. I think absolutely endorse that and agree with that. Wow, we've had half an hour already. It's flown. I've so enjoyed talking to you, Dave. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to mention or ask, or any final words before we wrap up?
Just that, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. I hope I haven't bored everyone to death with
Not at all. It's been fascinating.
You know, and I mean this genuinely. I'm not just trying to keep the limelight. If there's ever anything I can do to discuss service careers, both at commissioned and non-commissioned level, because I'm lucky, I have a lot of friends, a lot of experience who've gone down both streams, and both have huge advantages. You know, sometimes the non-commissioned route might be a little bit more surprising, but it can also be of extreme benefit, and in many ways a more interesting career stream.
Just on that, could you just briefly explain, as we finish up, the difference between non-commissioned and commissioned for anyone who doesn't understand?
So a school like Quags, you would typically go through the sixth form system, get a couple of A-levels, you would go into the careers office, and they would say, get yourself to university, get a degree, we'll look to sponsor you to get what's called a commission. So you're then a commissioned officer in the military, and that is where your senior strategic leaders and commanders come from. So it starts as you go to Sandhurst for a year after university in the commissioning course, and then you become effectively a personnel manager in your early years, then a tactical leader of a platoon, and then as you work up the ranks, captain, major, you will take command of subunits, regiments, squadrons, all the way up to then you'll join a thing, I think it's above half colonel, lieutenant colonel, you'd go on to the general staff, and you start making strategic jobs, strategic decisions when you're in command. And that's a tremendously exciting career structure for some. If you want the technical, hands-on, tactical soldiering, or whatever it might be, you know, playing with the kit, deploying the kit, but you know, strategically you've got no influence at all. You
do what you're told.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. You know, but that in its turn is very interesting, because you've then got 5 or 6 youngsters. Trust me, they are youngsters now. Yeah, coming through. It may be me getting old, but youngsters coming through, and they have had 12 weeks training, and you're on a big exercise or deployed. You know, and there's a lot on your shoulders, so it's tremendously. It's a different route. The technical trade is a different route. It's a bit more non-typical, but it can be just as satisfying. And then the best of both worlds, of course, is to get promoted quickly in the technical trade and then commission across as what's called a senior NCO, so sergeant and above level. And become a late entry officer, and then you've got a foot in both camps. Then you can provide a little bit of strategic guidance. You might get small subunit command, but you've also got a huge technical background that people respect fully. But either way, it can be an extremely rewarding career, even if you just do it for a couple of years. Yeah. Oh,
thank you for that. And we do get boys who are interested, and we do get boys that have followed both of those routes in the past, and I'm sure we will again. Listen, it's been absolutely brilliant to talk to you, Dave. Thank you. And please do come to visit us in school the next time you're in Wakefield. We'll keep in contact. We've got contact details for you. You've got contact details for us. I've absolutely loved talking to you, and we're really grateful for you joining us this afternoon. So thanks a million. Thanks very much. And all the best with your next step in your career.
Yeah, I've got 8 weeks of doing absolutely nothing, so please do keep in touch.
Get your golf handicap down, and we'll keep in touch.
I'll try and play Wakefield, yeah.
Yeah. Take care and all the best. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.